I tried to stress this out on multiple occasions. I would like to wholeheartedly strive to situate my stories in a true different world slash universe, not just our world with our rules, our socio-political climate, our historical development, just with cat girls. Although I am aware that as long as I am using humans as characters in my stories, especially as the protagonist, even though I want them to be different from me, the human of our real world, in thinking, in some physical aspects, in ways they approach certain situations, make certain decisions, because otherwise it just would not make sense that the story takes place in another universe. I can still use some, let's say, safety nets, as in humans need water, they need to breathe, there are men and women, and both are crucial to the species survival, and a few other things that are, I think, indicators of those characters belonging to the human race. I can experiment with those things on different characters coming from different races, beings that, for example, don't need to drink water, don't need to either consume it at all or can ingest it in a different way from us. But as long as I'm specifying that the character is of the human race, there are these things that I, on one hand, can use as a foundation for the very first stages of building that character, but I also need to keep them in mind for the rest of the story and address them when needed appropriately, so that if the character, well, fails to breathe, it has the needed consequences, and that within those differences between men and women in another universe that I've mentioned before in videos, there is still room for the basic need for a man and a woman, mother and a father, to create a child in that another universe, even though they might have a different set of separate biological and psychological distinctions. I did mention the physical strength and physical abilities between those two genders in different universes where magic is common. I don't think they need to be the same as in our world. And don't get me wrong, this is just me, my opinion, my feelings. There is no logic to it, no system, just things that I've observed through other media, through other stories, and want them to be my way in my stories. So even though some of those differences might be, well, different, on the other hand, there are some that are somehow unavoidable and are both a blessing and a curse in my eyes, because I have to write around them and I can also use them in certain scenarios. Well, just a too long observation, and now for the rapid arrows. The club gained a new member, and after their first adventure with him on board, it's the Mother's Day, and the club members are getting ready to offer their thanks and wishes to all the club's mothers. They decide to buy some flowers, and Speedy is going to write a different poem for every separate mother. He's thinking hard, mourning the difficult life poets have. When everything is ready, even Bubbles is holding a flower in his mouth. The first wishing goes well. Mirek gives her a flower pot, and the rest of the members are reciting the poem that Speedy painstakingly wrote. He even proudly comes forward as the creator of said poem, which may sound a bit tone deaf, but that's just Speedy. And even when reprimanded jokingly by Jarka Metelka that he really did not have to do that, he defends himself that he did not spend 2 hours on writing that poem to end up being an unknown artist. And the next mother is Jarkas Metelka, who warns the club members that they do have a cat in house and that it might be a good idea to leave Bubbles in front of the door and get over with the wishes without him, but Speedy takes it on himself to hold him properly and prevent any possible disruptions to the process that last about 2 seconds before Bubbles notices the cat hiding under a couch. And in the middle of reciting the poem, Bubbles decides to meet his new friend a bit more intimately, flies headfirst underneath the couch, dragging Speedy with himself. First comes out the cat, Bubbles emerges right after it, and only Speedy ends up buried in eternal darkness underneath the now collapsed couch. And since Speedy was right in the middle of saying that it was him who wrote or, well, composed the poem, now he did some different type of composing or, well, folding in this case. So the rest of the club members help him while pointing at the aftermath of the destruction, saying while laughing that this was folded by Speedy. And it's time for new adventures, camping by a stream. And while the boys are unpacking and getting ready for some outdoor cooking, Mirek is going to the ranger's cabin to obtain a permit to camp. But things might not go exactly as planned. Bubbles spots a squirrel and by furious barking tries to persuade it that he would like to make friends, and that alerts the ranger who hears the barking and in a scholarly way attempts to analyze the barking and figure out the breed of the dog, mumbling to himself that it's probably poachers that entered his turf and in the process completely butchers the breed Saint Bernard's dog in 2 different ways. Speedy spots the ranger approaching and screams that all hell will break loose and that every man for himself and that they all need to hide. He himself climbs up a tree. Yarka and Yindra hides behind a bush, and Redcap has the great idea that he will hang underneath a small bridge that crosses the stream, almost a small river, to hide himself. Unfortunately for him, the bridge bends under the steps of the slightly round-shaped ranger. The ranger is talking to himself that the intruders will get a 20,000 Czech crowns per person, mentioning the hated name tourists. The first club member the ranger actually encounters is Bubbles, who ambushes him using a single powerful bark, scaring the ranger into falling on his backside right on top of Yindra's and Yarka hiding spot, falling precisely on Yindra, who's screaming that an elephant is stomping on him, the fine already climbing to 40,000, and the ranger exclaiming, "How many of them are there?" Next one is Speedy unable to hold on anymore on the tree, falling down. Next one is completely drenched Redcap, who failed to climb back on top of the bridge, so he had to take the wet way. That's 80,000. And the last one showing up is Mirek, who just came back to the ranger shouting that unless the band of thieves is complete, he'll start shooting. But Mirek manages to explain the situation that he was going to the cabin to obtain the permit, but unfortunately he just missed the ranger who was doing the rounds. And when the ranger realizes that it's just five kids that want to do some camping, he shows mercy and tells them that he just wanted to scare them a little bit, and the members promise that there will be no damages that they'll cause to the forest or anywhere else. In the next one, Indra is cooking on stones and Redcap is rope jumping, currently the record holder, and Speedy is going to the river and the water seems much more wild than before. He takes Bubbles with himself and notices two boys on a boat being carried away by the current. He shouts at them, "What are these planters doing, riding these fierce waters in a washtub?" Apparently they were playing around the banks and then the current took them and they need help because there is a weir incoming and they have no way to steer the boat in any direction or slow it or stop it. He runs back that there are stowaways on the river and that they need to bring the rope that they've been using for the jumping activity and immediately help them. There is a problem though, and that's the rope being way too light and it can't fly far enough to reach the boys in the boat, and the weir is coming fast. The only chance to save them is a larger bridge that's right in front of them, so the rapid arrows have to sprint for two lives. Mirek tells the two boys to at least try to row with their hands to slow down just a little bit, and the club members manage to reach the bridge before the boat. They throw down the rope and the boys start climbing. The first one saying that he's never been able to climb even a meter on the rope, and just today the adrenaline somehow sent him flying up the rope. The other one is just barely holding on, and when he's not exactly on top of the bridge, he loses his strength, but Mirek and Yarka catch him in time. Mirek even climbs down the bridge a little bit, and when both boys are saved, Mirek sarcastically tells them that they can play again on the river when the water's high, because it turned to be such a good idea this time. And this is where I'm going to stop for this one. I am going to, as always, continue rambling on about protagonists, characters, and then add on more Rapid Arrows adventures.